Welcome to Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. A world where coming in second place is not an option, but where principle-centered winning is the only approach.
Good morning and welcome to Government Contracting Weekly, where each week we bring you unique insights, strategies and tactics as to how to win government contracts. And this morning, we actually have the entire force behind the show with us, some of my colleagues from Key Solutions. Tony DeLuca, thank you so much for joining us. Tony is a Senior Vice President with Key Solutions. Tim O'Connor, another Senior Vice President. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
And last but most certainly not least, not only the force behind the show, but the founder and the technical director and the leader of all of Key Solutions, Jim McCarthy. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Hillary.
And I thought, Jim, we really love for the audience who maybe doesn't know all about Key Solutions, the extensive history, been in business since 1983, over 120 billion in wins for clients since then. There's a lot more to Key Solutions than most people probably know. Could you share a little bit about the history?
Yeah, sure. We were founded under the name American Operations Corporation, hence our name AOC Key Solutions. But what we focus in nowadays is helping government contractors win government contracts. And as you mentioned, it's $122 billion in running. Each year since 1983, we've won at least $1 billion for our clients rather. And since, let's say, the last 7 or 8 years, we've been averaging about $9 billion. We provide services in really 3 areas. Basically, an opportunity identification, then to know what to bid, and then strategy, which is to know how to win, and then proposals, which are to know how to execute that strategy in order to win the contract.
So capture, strategy and proposal services end to end for any kind of win, any kind of size, any kind of company?
Yes, ma'am. Startups where the owner has a gleam in his or her eye about where they want to go, to the largest aerospace defense contractors.
And I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that for some of the major contractors, they use Key Solutions extensively for surge support as well.
Well, yes, they use this for 2 reasons. Surge support, like you say, but also when they know they have to win. Okay, and they sometimes know that we understand better how to win the contract than they do.
Yes.
And they'll use us as a sort of a sounding board, as an alter ego, as a coach, as a facilitator, as an energizer, something that gets the job done for our clients.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. As you've heard, Key Solutions provides strategy, capture and proposal services to government contractors to help them win. And really what's very unique about Key Solutions is because they work with contractors of all sizes, for all agencies, all kinds of contracts, they have a plethora of experience in terms of the very best practices. And Tim, you personally have extensive experience as well as a firm. Would you share with our audience, particularly with regard to third-party assessments, some of the work that you've seen Key Solutions provides?
Third-party assessments are a unique tool, I think, that can be brought to bear to improve our clients' win probability. It's an innovative tool in that it provides the government client the opportunity in a neutral venue to share their thoughts and ideas on how that contractor is doing supporting that government client.
Because otherwise the contractor might think, well, I'm doing a great job. They tell Key Solutions they're doing a great job, and they think they are, and they really don't know. So you're talking about third-party, independent analysis.
Right, exactly. And it's, you get an opportunity to get in there, talk to them about technical performance. You ask them about cooperation, communication, key personnel, cost and schedule. And you're likely to get more informative information because the government personnel, they don't want to
badmouth or say something negative about an individual, but they feel more comfortable. Yeah.
Right, in a neutral venue, they can,
Jim,
they're more free to talk about it.
Yeah.
Not only that, I think there hasn't been a single time when we've conducted one of these, and there's probably been like over 1,200 different assessments.
Yes.
For some, like, I think the number was like 15 or 16,000 government contractor or government employees.
Yes.
And there's never been a single instance that I can remember where our client didn't learn something new that would help them do better job for the client and then also increase their win probability.
Like when you break
Right.
up with someone, you don't say you've got halitosis, you say something polite. So that you can't
Right.
say it actually to the person. You're actually going to say something
That's-
really...
that's one way of
yeah,
putting it.
pretty
Yeah,
analogy.
You get new ideas,
Yes.
you get some innovations perhaps.
Yes.
You learn about personnel, and maybe one person doesn't like one of the contractors' people on a job.
Yeah.
And that could spoil things.
And that
you
could
know?
taint the
It could-
entire
it could be-
project. Yeah, your entire
exactly,
contract.
exactly,
Yeah, and you
right.
begin
And
to
I,
hear that.
and I might
yes.
add, this is not just an ad hoc tool. This has been a tool that's been developed over time by Key Solutions. It's comprehensive, it's analytical, and it provides this candid feedback.
It shows the government that it's about quality, it's about providing the best service you possibly can.
And you're willing to listen. And you want to listen to what they have
And you
to
wanna
say
make the
versus
changes.
yourself.
And like Tony says, there's sort of an empirical or analytical part where we actually rate and score how they're doing, and then there's also a narrative part where we get suggestions on how how the client could improve their services and what they need to do.
And so that's
really
actually,
works.
you use it also, and it's used as also part of what you call the notional winner profile. So I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit more, Jim. Maybe expand upon that.
Well, the notional winner profile is what we call the perfect contractor team, if you will. It is a conglomeration or collection of the perfect attributes of a perfect contractor. It is as if the government could sit down at a table at a drawing board and come up, well, what kind of company do we want as a contractor? And they'd write down all these different features and what they would want. Well, the notional winner profile is sort of our mechanism in order to figure out exactly what the government wants, rather. And
Including components from the third-party assessment.
yeah,
then,
and we feed
Otherwise
that into
it's not independent.
It's fed into that. And then here's the remarkable thing about notional winner profiles, and maybe it stands to reason, but we found that the closer a client can get to meeting that notional winner profile, the better their chances are of winning. Because
Yes.
after all, that's what the government's looking for. So it is almost the basis of all the work that we do when it comes to competitive assessments and other things. So it's
So it works. And you
Very-
also play the devil's advocate somewhat.
I was
you were
going
gonna
to
say,
say,
Tim?
yeah, I was going to say that notional winner profile, you develop the profile, that's the benchmark, then you compare our clients against that benchmark, how they rank, and then you rank the competitors against there as well. So you have strengths and weaknesses, and you find out where you have weaknesses. So if you do the notional winner profile as well in advance, part of the capture and strategy process, it gives you time to address and fill any weaknesses you might have to mitigate any of those problems.
And then play devil's advocate as well. I know that you...
Right.
Well, I
yes,
think
yeah.
another added benefit of the notional winner profile, particularly when it's done in a collaborative setting with your client, it really truly illuminates the client's competitive disadvantages, which allows them to then consider how they fill those gaps.
how to mitigate it.
Right,
How to
mitigate it.
Now
So
they know what they got to fix.
They've
And-
identified it, being realistic.
And if we do it,
yes.
and if it's done in time, you still have time to fix it before the RFP hits or the procurement is let or anything.
So you're not ignoring it, you're actually looking at it, addressing it, and rectifying
very
it.
proactive.
Yeah, being
Yeah.
rectifying
Yeah,
it as well.
yeah.
But there's a lot of things also, Jim, that you do before you actually submit, including like black hat reviews.
Yeah. Well, the Black Hat, first of all, I want to say that the Black Hat's been around for a long time. So
Yes.
I'm not saying that like somehow we invented it, but we've invented a interesting and useful new twist on the traditional Black Hat. So what we do is instead of just sort of scoring the competition using a scale of 0 to 10, which has its place, I suppose, but under our Black Hat process, we work with the client and we sort of become the bad cops, if you will. And our job is to develop a strategy that would knock off our client. In other words, would beat our client. And so the Black Hats, we're wearing the bad cop role. We come in with a strategy that is designed to defeat them in the competition, in the procurement. And then step by step, we walk our way through the Black Hat until we have a mitigation that will offset and turn that disadvantage into an advantage. So it's a different twist on the Black Hat, but we found it to be more effective in
It actually
long analysis.
accomplishes more.
I
Yes,
think so.
you're more
I
proactive.
think we introduce it oftentimes in our strategy conference as being the Darth Vader.
Yes, right. People get what that is. Yes,
Yeah,
that's very figurative.
So
You can
it's
see
just a
what it-
role playing, you know, and it's what would a competitor, what could they say about the client that we want to make sure we've at least thought about so we have an answer for it.
Yeah.
What
And
a
you-
well-determined, well-funded, aggressive competitor will do to, take
Trying to knock
the
you off.
business.
Yes,
Exactly.
right.
exactly,
And you can do that when they're incumbent as well.
Oh,
I mean,
right,
any
and
situation,
absolutely
every in
anytime.
any situation. Yes.
Exactly.
Hillary,
Tony.
you mentioned that the devil's advocate role. It's kind of a unique role that we play from time to time. It's either done in a dedicated way, depending upon the affordability of our client's budget, or as a added role to either a capture manager or proposal manager. But it's what it would connote to you. It's essentially challenging the conventional wisdom of all of the key aspects of a proposal process.
And like putting in the worst case scenario as well,
Just challenging the status quo or the conventional wisdoms regarding win themes, discriminators, competition, pricing, so that it illuminates again the issues that the client believes may not exist.
Right. Well, it causes the client to sharpen their swords because there's somebody, and by the way, it's an institutional role. We don't necessarily have to believe it to be true. It's a
Right.
role playing many times, and Tony is exceptional at this, but you just make sure that we challenge everything. We've thought it through. We've pulled the
So
string
we're
to the
not
very end.
navel-gazing and
Think
drinking
harder.
our own bathwater. We're
Right.
really looking outside the
That's
box,
right.
yes,
Right.
as critically as we possibly can,
Absolutely.
yes,
Yeah.
to make sure there's a win. Great,
Kind
gentlemen.
of a fun role.
Yes, thank you. Thank you
You're
very
good at it too, Brian.
Yes. Of course, every government contractor is very familiar with proposals. There are some best practices with regard to proposals and the use of SMEs, subject matter experts. And on that note, I'd like to ask you, Tim, what are some of the best practices in terms of proposals you've seen?
Well, I think it's important for contractors to know and understand that their subject matter experts are more often billable to the client. They're actually doing the hard work, they're doing the heavy lifting, and the clients need to understand that they're billable and they want to keep the client happy. So the last thing you want to do is pull them off the job to help write a proposal.
Because then you risk making the incumbent upset.
Right,
Yeah, and
that's
you
one
yeah.
aspect. And then typically the subject matter experts, they're not writers, they're engineers, they're IT people.
By definition, they're experts.
operational, yeah, exactly. So
And technically oriented, often.
right, exactly, and they don't have the skill set necessary to write. So
Mm-hmm.
we found that if we either in the morning or maybe midday or at the end of the day or weekends, we get the folks in to meet with our professional writers, the subject matter experts. We have technical crosstalks either as a group or one-on-one. We interview the subject matter experts, we take copious notes, and then we turn around, go away and write the proposal prose, so to speak, and do the best job we can with it. And then later we go back to the subject matter expert and see if we've got it right, does it read well, et cetera. So we capture
From
that.
a technical standpoint, but then you've even got a journalist on board.
Yeah,
Former
yeah.
journalists who are great writers because
Right.
they're used to writing a little bit more pithy.
See, some of my best friends
Yes.
are SMEs, so I'm not going to insult anybody, but most of them think of themselves as Ernest Hemingway, and I can tell you they're probably not.
Yes.
They've got the answers in their head, and what they have to do is get it down on a piece of paper somehow, and we have the process
Right.
like that
in a way
Tim
that's
was talking
appealing
about.
and differentiates
sells,
them. It
makes-
sells,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's evaluator
yes.
friendly.
Yeah,
They can
yeah.
read it well.
And the evaluator is going to score
it
on what's
flows.
written, not just on, oh, this was good, but I couldn't read through it, and yes, yeah.
And oftentimes it's a sensitive relationship because they are very bright. They're proud of what they do, and any challenges or disturbance in their thought process is often troublesome.
Yeah.
So you really have to gain a
Be
rapport.
diplomatic with them. Yes.
They don't like to have their baby called ugly. is
No,
what-
no, you have to, well, of course you have to be diplomatic. And also in terms of themes, they always say if you've got to wait for the evaluator to determine differentiators and win themes, you've lost
probably
it
too
right
late,
there. So in terms of themes, you can't expect themes to bubble up, I know that, and so you
Right.
work with also the writers on themes.
Well, the theme development really starts as part of even in the business development phase and the capture phase and the strategy phase. They should be identified early, developed early, be, well formed, and you don't need a lot of themes, maybe a handful, but they need to be well developed, they need to be written down, they need to be documented and agreed to by the entire team. And then when it comes time for proposal kickoff, they should be reviewed with the entire team and be made available so they understand them, and they could be put into the proposal where they need to be put in.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And another best practice on themes is make sure they have the proverbial feature, which everybody has, then make sure it also contains a benefit to the government customer, and then where possible, make sure you can prove to the government customer where you've done it before. So feature benefit proof is sort of a good paradigm for a theme. When you
Yeah,
think-
terms of
and it could be done in
guidance,
table format to
Exactly.
make it easy and it sticks out and helps the government
Visually,
evaluator.
yes. So you visually
they'll
depicted it,
remember
and then you can expand upon it. And then you also, everything, of course, you have to do all that, and it has to comply. So I know, Tony, we also have an integrated compliance matrix that you also use.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that we have a product or a tool called PICM, Proposal Integration Compliance Matrix. It starts out essentially being the framework or the outline for the actual proposal, and then it acts as ultimately a compliance matrix. But one of the features we believe is even value added is to take the win themes, take the discriminators, and weave them into the PICM. And what that allows you to do is, one, to make sure that the win themes and discriminators are properly reflected ultimately in the proposal, but more importantly, strategically reflected, consistent with the outline in the compliance matrix, so that it's not enough just to have win themes and discriminators in your proposal. It's more important to have them in the right places.
The right, that the government wants, otherwise you're not
Right.
complying. Right,
Right.
yes, yeah.
In this PICM product or tool that allows for that kind of structure to happen.
And then in terms of the different roles that people are playing, you mentioned earlier, because you've got to be so diplomatic with a sneeze. Also, capture managers play a critical role, Jim. There's lots of different roles in the whole process.
Absolutely. And to sort of play off what Tony just said, so you have this PICM developed. One of the best practices in proposals is to appoint somebody as the so-called compliance manager. And the compliance manager's job is to continually, day by day, as the work is developing and as the text is building, is to check for the status and make sure that not only are we complying with the RFP, which is absolutely necessary, of course, but that we're complying with the wishes of the capture manager or the strategy or the vision of the capture manager. So that's what the compliance manager does. Another best practice is we call an integrator, and the integrator's job is to work across all authors and all sections and make sure that there is a consistent storyline, a golden thread, if you will.
So
that
you're not going down
flows
rat
through.
holes.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
And then make sure that writer A is saying the same thing as writer B over
Within
here.
those broad themes.
Yes, and so an integrator, and then makes it read like
Fits well
Consistent.
together, right.
what's the term?
One voice.
One voice.
One voice, yeah. So
And
there's
then-
consistency.
And then the third practice that in proposals that we've come to really value is that of a solution architect. And a solution architect is the person who's basically responsible for developing the technical and management approach and the organizational concepts and what we're presenting to the government, and then making sure that that technical approach is also spread across the entire document.
Well, it's no surprise to me then that Chris Dunn, who I was recently golfing with, President and CEO of A&S Federal, said that, because he's working on his side, both Accenture and also Lockheed have said they've never seen end-to-end such a well-run proposal working with KSI. I mean, that was his exact words, which
Really?
I thought, yeah, it was.
And you didn't pay him for that?
No.
Did you
And
put that in writing?
I didn't even let him win either. So.
Oh, you didn't beat our client on the golf course, did you? Uh-oh.
There are many situations that aren't easy for a consultant. Key Solutions prides itself on principle-centered winning. So there are some ethical situations that the firm's often in that are somewhat difficult in turning away potential revenue. I know, Tony, you've been in a situation where you were actually advising a client something that they didn't come in with at the beginning. And tell us about your analysis and what that situation was.
Well, in this particular circumstance, this is a very small client, has a toe in the water relative to government contracting, and they came to us to provide them strategic advice regarding whether they should prime or sub, and the sub arrangement would be in regards to teaming. They asked me to do, I would say, some exhaustive analysis, which I did, and we shared it collaboratively. And after that analysis, they came to the conclusion that it was in their best interest to prime the contract and attract other teaming partners as a subcontractor. And I basically told them very candidly that I'm here to support you based upon the decision you made. There was no ethics involved in my view. It was just a business decision that the owner chose to make, and I was there to support them, and I'm currently working on that engagement.
Yeah.
in a very, very productive and I would say value-added way.
But there are lots of situations where we may have been, have to look somebody in the eye, maybe be in the situation to tell them to no bid. Tim.
Right. Well, it gets back to starting early on the capture process and having a number of opportunities and gate reviews to, educate the client, and there are smart people about the values of and the win probability of bidding as a prime or as a subcontract. And the earlier you can get that in there, the better you can determine what your approach is, whether it's to prime or to be a subcontractor or a teammate or maybe even a joint venture. What is the government contractor looking for? What do you think they're looking for? Do they see the value in our client bidding as a prime, or would they be better off as a subcontractor or a team member on another team? Right?
Well, yeah, and I can remember, it's probably been a decade ago, but I can remember the first time I was confronted with a very dilemma that you're describing. And it was a large company. I mean, they were a large company, and they had a bid and proposal budget of at least $2.5 million, $3 million to go after this job, okay? And they brought us in to essentially get them to win. And we went through all of our processes and all of our gates and all of our steps. And one night, it just suddenly dawned on me, they don't stand a chance of winning this job. They really do not, okay? So I'm thinking to myself, well, what do I do? Well, I think the first thing they do under this principle-centered winning you mentioned is to let them know what we think. And then if they don't accept the advice,
If
then
they disregard it, you just got to do
That's
what
it.
you said, like Tony
Obligation to the
says.
client.
then,
Yes.
like Tony says, it's our
Tony
job
says
is
you've
to
got
do the
to.
best we can for it.
Yes.
But here's a case where I'm all nervous because I'm meeting with the CEO or the chairman of the company that brought us in here, and he says, "I hear you're going to tell us to no bid." I said, "Well, yes, sir. I think it's a mistake." And the capture manager really took offense at it, and I'm telling you, he was lit up at me personally, and I won't say I got thrown off the job. I'll just say that what happened was they decided to go without KSI. The bottom line of it was they lost. They didn't make the competitive range. They flushed $2.5 million. And he came back to me afterwards and he said, "You know what, Jim?
You were right.
And there's a case where, honestly, though, I wish I had been wrong.
Yes,
I wish
yes.
they had won,
Right,
but they
wish
didn't.
they had won.
They
And then
didn't.
also for a government contractor in the marketplace, they can't keep losing things because otherwise they also get a reputation as a loser. As many of our frequent viewers know, we always ask our guests, what are the keys to winning? And Key Solution is the force behind the show. So I think it's particularly special that today we do hear from the force behind the show what each of my colleagues here at Key Solutions views as a key to winning. Tony, what do you think are the top keys to winning?
Although many of our proposals or RFPs call for what they refer to as best value in the government, it's becoming increasingly clear that what they really mean is lowest price.
LPTA.
LPTA. So we need to, in the early stages, develop a price strategy that achieves that lowest price, not ignoring, of course, the technical acceptability of our response. Not only the price strategy, you got to get corporate buy-in early. Without those elements in place in the early stages of the proposal, you can write the best proposal possible under those circumstances and under these current trends and end up not being the winner. So
Great, yes. And it shows that with the price that you mentioned, and we're hearing that absolutely everywhere in the marketplace, a government contractor only sort of really is privy to their pricing. That's something that we can offer at Key Solutions because we know all the prices and we know what's going on.
And
so
by the way, the
good
lowest
advice.
price doesn't mean you lose money on the contract. There's
Yes.
smart ways to create.
To go about that, yes.
Yeah.
Creative ways, yes. Tim, what are you seeing? Keys to winning.
Picking up on Tony's point, price is critical, but you have to be compliant first. You have to be technically acceptable.
Because then you don't even get to the price. It's not technically. Yeah,
exactly.
Yes, yeah.
So, conventional wisdom says that you earn 70 to 80% of the points if you have a compliant proposal, which is critical. It has to be well written. You have to be able to have the pick-em so you can guide the evaluators to the answers to the points that they're looking for. The other 20 or 30% is really the salesmanship, the value that you're bringing to that contract. So you have to first focus on compliance, but then you have to focus on, what it is that the value that you're bringing and how you're separating yourself from your competition. Mm-hmm. So those things in conjunction with price to win, it greatly improves your probability of winning.
Yes, Jim.
Yeah. My key to winning is very simple. It's what I call flexibility. And let me tell you what I mean. I don't mean a 99-step process that sounds great in the classroom but fails in the war room. What I mean is a flexible proposal process that allows us to take the best from what the client has in their culture and their process and meld it with the best that we have to have a winning.
Collaboratively,
Yes.
yes.
So you won't find us like it's our way or the highway.
Not
It's being
dictatorial.
flexible and making sure that what we do is focused and efficient and as cost effective as possible to win that job. So we don't get bogged down in process. What we get bogged down in, if that's even the right word, is winning. We're going to focus on winning. We're going to stay with that. And so
And
that's
companies
the
should
key.
come to you early enough, because if they come too late, they may not have all the processes in place, they may not have everything there. It's too late to win.
It's if you come too late.
We'll do the best we can, but
Yes.
it doesn't, it improves their probability, but their win probability improves more greatly, if such a thing,
Yes.
the earlier we get in
Right.
there.
And if you have to call an audible on the line, so to speak, to use a sports reference, that's what we do. If we're short on time, we will tweak that process in order to get it to deliver what we need in the quickest possible time.
And I think one thing that our audience also should be aware of is that just recently I remember that there was a particular firm that Key Solutions was working with that most unfortunately another firm comes along and wants to be going after that particular opportunity. You have to commit the resources early and go for it early, because otherwise they're not available. And now everybody's anticipating this avalanche of procurement opportunities. It's a question of working with you early, because what you don't do is suddenly mid working with a client you won't come in and take a higher bidder. You stick with that one firm.
Our rule is, there are two rules. One is we only support one client on one RFP, no firewalls and
No exceptions.
no
Right.
exceptions. And the other is first come, first serve.
First come,
So
first serve,
you're
but,
right
it's,
in
but it's
terms of
first
saying
come,
that.
first serve in terms of committing the resources and going with it, not just talking with you and like
Right.
wondering
First
about it.
one
Yeah.
that gets the commitment to
Commitment
us.
is a commitment, yes.
The flexible approach that Jim just described, I believe, is a key differentiator in our market
Between you and other firms, yes, yes.
and greatly appreciated by clients.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've heard that collaboratively. Actually, going back to that same Chris Dunn, President and CEO of ANS, he said they're all so nice. So, speaking of nice, gentlemen, thank you for being nice this morning. Thank you for coming. To Tony DeLuca, Senior Vice President, Key Solutions, to Tim O'Connor, Senior Vice President, Key Solutions, and to Jim, the force behind the show, the owner and the technical director.
Or the heavyweight, maybe.
So thank you very much for coming, and I think our audience has benefited. So you know what it takes to win. You know that since 1983, KSI has helped clients win over 122 billion in wins, year after year, billions in wins. Thank you, and we certainly hope that you'll join us next week to learn more about how you can win the next government contract that's open and available. Thank you.
You've been watching Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored each week by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. For additional information, comments, questions, or suggestions, please write us at governmentcontractingweekly.com.